All right, so have you ever thought about all the ways you could be making extra money with stuff you already own?
I bet you have more opportunities than you realize.
Totally. And to get this deep dive going, we found this super interesting list online called 10 Extra Money Ideas with things you already own.
Yeah, there's some real gems in there.
I know, right?
Uh,
It's not even just about the money. It's like realizing you have all these hidden income streams just waiting to be tapped into.
it's really about being resourceful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a perfect example of that is this whole sharing economy thing that's been blowing up lately,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
like renting out your car on Turo.
Yeah. Or like an extra room on Airbnb.
Those are good ones to start with.
Yeah.
What do you think is driving this whole sharing economy trend? It seems like it's really taken off.
Well, I think people are realizing they can make money from things that are just sitting around not being used.
It's like turning your stuff into a side hustle.
Exactly. And with platforms like Turo, you can actually make a pretty decent amount of money, especially if you have a car that's in demand.
How much are we talking? Like hundreds of dollars a month.
Oh, yeah, potentially even more depending on the car and your location.
Wow. But, I mean, isn't it risky letting strangers drive your car? I'd be worried about accidents or damage.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid concern. But that's where Turo's insurance comes in.
Oh, right. They handle all that.
Yep. And they have pretty strict vetting process for renters, too. You can check their reviews and all that, so there are ways to mitigate the risks.
Okay, so Turo sounds pretty cool. But what about Airbnb? I've heard some horror stories about nightmare guests. How do you even begin to navigate all that?
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful. Doing your research is key, like reading reviews and setting clear expectations in your listing.
And legally, is it just as simple as listing your space? Are there rules and stuff you need to know about?
It depends on where you live. Every city has its own regulations about short-term rentals, so you'll need to check those out first.
So there's definitely some homework involved before jumping in head first.
For sure, it's not entirely passive income. You got to be ready to manage bookings and communicate with guests and deal with potential issues.
So it's not just listing your place and raking in the cash.
Not quite. There's work involved.
Got it. So, switching gears a bit, let's talk about the gig economy.
Oh, yeah. Lots of opportunities there, too.
Totally. Like driving for Uber or Lyft or delivering food. What's your take on those? Are they actually worth it?
It really depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you want flexibility and control over your schedule, then those platforms can be great.
Yeah, you're basically your own boss.
Exactly. You can choose when and where you work, but you also have to factor in things like gas, car maintenance, and all that.
Right. Those expenses can eat into your earnings.
Definitely. And then with food delivery, you've got to think about things like tips and how much you can realistically deliver in an hour.
That's a good point. It's not all about the base pay.
Exactly. But I do think there's potential to make decent money with these gigs, especially if you're strategic about it.
It's all about finding the right gig for you. Yep, that's the key.
Okay, so let's move on to something that I think a lot of people can relate to. Making money by selling stuff you no longer need.
Ah, the good old decluttering and cashing in strategy.
Exactly. Platforms like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist have made it so easy to sell stuff online. Any tips for making the most of them?
Well, first off, make sure you take really good photos of what you're selling, like good lighting and different angles.
Yeah, presentation is everything. You want to make your stuff look as appealing as possible.
Right. And then be really detailed in your description. Include all the relevant information so people know exactly what they're getting.
That's smart. And how about pricing? Is there a magic formula for figuring that out?
I'd say research similar items and see what they're going for. You want to be competitive, but also fair to yourself.
Makes sense. And I always like to build in a little wiggle room for negotiation, too.
Well, yeah, good call. People love to feel like they're getting a deal. Totally. Okay, so we've talked about selling your old stuff, but what about selling something you create, like photographs? I've heard people make money online through stock photo sites. Is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sites like Shutterstock and Adobe Stock are always looking for new images.
So how does that work? Do you just upload any photo you take and hope for the best?
Well, it helps to understand what kind of images are in demand. Think about what businesses and advertisers might need.
So you have to be a little strategic about it.
Exactly. The more relevant your photos are to current trends and needs, the more likely they are to sell.
That makes sense. Now, have you heard of this platform called Fat Llama?
Yeah, it's a bit more niche.
It is. You can rent out pretty much anything on there. I mean, within reason.
Right. It's good for specific items like cameras, drones, musical instruments, that kind of thing. Things people might need for a short period of time.
And what's the advantage of using a platform like that?
Well, they handle things like insurance and payment processing, which takes a lot of the hassle out of it.
That's pretty convenient.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there are so many creative ways to make extra money these days.
Absolutely. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are platforms out there that make it easy to get started.
Totally. But let's not forget about the simplest way to make your money work for you. Saving.
Ah, yes. Good old-fashioned savings.
Exactly. And with interest rates going up, it's a pretty good time to have some money stashed away in a high-yield savings account. Have you seen what some of these online banks are offering?
Oh, yeah. They're getting pretty competitive these days. Like, Discover's online savings account has a pretty impressive rate right now. It's definitely worth checking out.
So when you say high yield, just how high are we talking? Like, is it really that much better than a traditional savings account?
Oh, yeah. You can definitely see a difference, especially with compound interest.
Can you break down compound interest for us? I think a lot of people hear that term but aren't exactly sure how it works.
Sure. Basically, it means you earn interest not just on your initial deposit, but also on the interest you've already earned.
So your money is basically making money on itself.
Exactly. It's a snowball effect.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So even if you can't invest a ton of money right now, just putting a little bit aside can really add up over time.
Definitely. Every little bit counts.
Well, I feel like we've uncovered some seriously awesome money-making opportunities today. It's so cool to see how many options there are.
Yeah, there's definitely something for everyone. It's all about finding what works for you.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you could even combine a few of these ideas, like rent out your car during the day, deliver food in the evening, and spend your weekends selling your photography online.
Wow, yeah. You could create a whole little money-making ecosystem.
Exactly. It's all about being creative and resourceful.
I love that.
So for all our listeners out there, I challenge you to think about what resources you have that you could be putting to work. You might be surprised at what you come up with.
And remember, even small steps can lead to big results.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but be sure to check back next week for another fascinating topic.
See you then.